I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm not even a savvy investor.
Well, good day and welcome to another edition of the Aussie Ideas Man. I think by now I would be Aptera's largest troll by far, and certainly a naysayer that tries hard. I'm going to have to cut some of my pauses out because I'm still pausing a lot. I'm trying to just speak naturally, but it just doesn't happen. Just staring at my computer screen is unnatural, totally unnatural. But I'm not going to muck around. I'm just going to say what I feel on the spot. Nothing pre recorded, nothing pre planned. Just run through this. I've only seen it once. I'm going to show my face as I go through these 5 points on why this guy from Chasing Aptera has decided he has 5 important reasons to invest. It's completely off the cuff, but like the snake oil salesman Chris Anthony, I think I've said it often enough that it should come back to me fairly quickly. Unfortunately, my brain at 70 years old is not as sharp as it used to be. Some people don't like to admit that sort of thing, but I'm a realist.
But I did invest in Aptera. After the fact, I came across an online Forbes advisor article called How to Invest in a Startup. I'll link to it below. Among other things, it has 5 questions you need to ask yourself before investing in a startup. I wanted to see how my decision matched up, so I asked myself those questions, and I thought I'd share the answers with you. Hi, my name
And I'm going to share my thoughts with you too. Fair's fair, isn't it?
is Bill, and welcome to Chasing Aptera. In this series, I chronicle the trials and tribulations of purchasing, acquiring, transporting, and licensing this unique solar electric vehicle. Question number 1. What do you know about the startup? Is it a field, industry, or product that you're familiar with? My whole career was in technology. I worked in the telecommunications department at Fidelity Investments. I worked at Texas Instruments, NEC, Raytheon, and retired at Verizon, where I designed global wide area fiber optic networks. I also worked at a company you probably never heard of called Ztel. In 1981, it was the most heavily invested startup in New England history. But by 1986, this company that had invented what was considered a revolutionary telephone system with an integrated token ring local area network was no more. So while my background is not specifically in electric car manufacturing, I've done the research, and I do have the technical background to understand the significance of Aptera's engineering approach. I also have firsthand knowledge of the behind the scenes working of a startup.
I don't think that's good enough. Nowhere near good enough. His background is inappropriate. I don't think just being an employee of a startup that failed gives him any credibility at all. What I know about Aptera Motors is that they failed once. They existed from 2006 to 2011, came out with a similar product, and it failed. They liquidated because they ran out of money. That failure is looking like it's going to fail again. And the reason why it's going to fail again is, again, they struggle to make money. They had Google on their side first time round, and Google refused to stump up a little bit of their petty cash to make them go into production when they were oh so close, as they said. They said they were close in 2009. In 2011, they must have been right on the doorstep. In any case, Google wouldn't stump up the money or any of the other corporate investors. So now they're crowdfunding. They're scratching the bottom of the barrel, and they look like they're going to not have enough money to succeed. If you look at the latest SEC filings, that should indicate that this is the case. But there's stronger reasons why they should fail. And that is because skin cooling doesn't work. And in their latest video, talking to the cretin from AOC, Steve Fambro said, we're not going to have the Valley Pan because the Valley Pan technology is not there yet. This is 4 years after they've been advertising that this is what will come out. And on what they say is on the cusp of producing, which it really isn't, they're lying. They turn around and say, no, you're not going to get skin cooling after all that. And the second thing is, solar technology hasn't proven to work either. There have been two failed large companies that have not managed to make solar technology work. So here they are saying there's 40 miles per day up to, and no other manufacturer that has tried, no other startup that has tried, has indicated that there's anywhere near 40 miles per day out of their solar. Less than half that. So what we're getting is lies. We're just getting unsubstantiated lies. They've had 5 fake prototypes, and they've had almost 4 years to prove many of the performance claims that they have, and they just refuse to do so. I'll just move on. That's enough off the top of my head to start with.
Question number 2. is the team passionate about their idea? Anyone who has seen co-CEOs Chris Anthony and Steve Fambro in action know how passionate they are. Just take a look at Steve Fambro's wrap-up in Aptera's February 2024 update.
APTERA is more than a vehicle. It's a movement, and Chris and I will stop at nothing to get this vehicle into production. I have no doubt that APTERA is going to succeed.
This one is just snake oil talk. And the snake oil salesmen are the ones that are the most passionate. There's no doubt about that. If you're saying they're highly passionate, that's an indication that these are snake oil salesmen. If we go back to a Jay Leno video a couple of years ago, you will notice that they really left APTERA version 1 because they'd lost interest. They said they had better things to do. One of them was growing vegetables. The other one, I don't know, he had about 8 failed ventures. I don't think anything would have been better to do than to make this if it was a reality. The best I think Chris Anthony could do was make batteries for forklift trucks. How can be making batteries for forklift trucks be better to do than this goal of bringing solar mobility to the world? These people just lie. And past things that they have said indicate that they were quite comfortable with walking away from the idea first time round.
Question number 3. Does the startup have domain expertise? Both founders and co-CEOs Steve Fambro and Chris Anthony have extensive experience with startups. For instance, Chris Anthony founded Flux Power, which designs and manufactures lithium battery solutions. Chris also founded a wakeboat company called Epic Boats and gained experience in composite materials. In addition to Aptera, Steve founded Fambro, an indoor vertical farming company, and has a background in electrical engineering. He worked at a company called Illumina, where he helped design robots. In fact, Steve and Chris started a company in 2006, which was a precursor to what we know now as.
I'll just split it here because there's a lot to say about this domain experience. An electrical engineer who grows vegetables has not gathered any domain experience. And as for Chris Anthony, he has had about 8 failed startups. I think his Epic Boats was in trouble for poor quality. This is only rumour, so do your research if you want to know exactly whether these things are true. But I should be able to gossip along with them and just counter with suggestions that certain things might be not right, and just say to you, if you really want to know, if you want to substantiate anything, do your own homework. But the rumours are Epic Boats was a failure, even if, well, I don't even know if he has it or not. Check out what he's done with Epic Boats. But I think you'll find there's no domain experience in Epic Boats ever since they've gone to carbon fibre bodies, because his honeycomb resin infused body is not being used at all now. And those, what do you call them, material handling vehicles, forklift trucks basically, small batteries for forklift trucks. They are basically what's in all of these fake prototypes, and they're calling from 250 miles to 1,000 miles of range, when all they've got in there is something only capable of making a forklift truck go for probably half a day. Hardly any miles at all. The reality is far from what they sell, the snake oil they sell. The reality is just not there. They don't have domain experience. Nobody has domain experience in such a vehicle. They say it's groundbreaking. Well, how can they have domain experience in something that's groundbreaking? It doesn't add up.
Aptera, called Accelerated Composites. The company also aimed to produce a 3-wheeled vehicle with exceptional fuel efficiency, and they eventually changed the name of the company to Aptera. Unfortunately, they were advised to hire someone from the automotive industry to run the company, which they did in 2008, but it turned out he did not share their vision. Steve and Chris left the company in 2010, and unable to procure funding, particularly government loans, the company liquidated in 2011, meaning its assets were sold and used to settle creditors. The 2,000 people who had put down $500 each to reserve a vehicle were reimbursed.
Now that's misleading, and they always say that. Not all of the 2,000 were reimbursed. They reimbursed some of them, but the millions of dollars in investment money from people like Google, from corporate companies, was spent and never returned to the investors. So shareholders lost out. This was all amortized by Google being so big that they could virtually conceal the loss. It was somewhere to the tune of around $100 million the first time round. And now they're having a second go at it. And mum and dad investors are going to lose what the Google investors lost. There'll be no amortizing it. There'll be no looking at your share portfolio and it's still looking a little good, because you're just going to lose it. There's nothing. You're not in a corporate company that has all sorts of fingers in all sorts of other investment pies. It's just going to go. And that's the reality of it. Be prepared.
Committed to their vision, however, Steve and Chris were able to relaunch the company we know today as APTERA in 2019 with a redesigned solar all-electric vehicle designed by Jason Hill. Jason was a designer at Porsche's American Design Studio and is president of 11 LLC, a design studio with a number of automotive clients. Taking what they learned from their first attempt, Steve and Chris made sure they retained control of the new company, but partnered and consulted with industry experts. Foremost is Sandy Monroe.
Sandy Monroe has backed quite a few EV startups of late and has a track record that you could only call a failure. I think he backed Archimoto, and Archimoto is struggling. And he's talked big on a few others. But once again, a groundbreaking product gives nobody, not even past experts, any expertise in that domain.
With a 50-year career helping companies like GM, BMW, and Ford, Sandy is known for his lean design methodology and had a big impact on APTERA's approach to design and manufacturing. Today, we see Steve and Chris have learned from their mistakes.
And I'll also add that if you like Jason Hill's designs, get pictures of them and put them on the wall, because that's all they're worth. When it comes to the real vehicle, he's out of his depth as well. Designing for Porsche means nothing.
And the mistakes of other would-be EV manufacturers, partnered with the best in the field and taken a smart, measured, capital-efficient approach to bringing their vehicle to market. They are beyond the prototype phase, and at this recording have received the first of their production intent bodies for testing.
They're not beyond the prototype phase. They had this plan of 4 phases, and the last phase would be production built. That is, that they would have their production line up and running, and they would build deltas, or PIs as they changed the name to, on that production line, so that these are the things that you would be getting. I'll remind you of that, and you can look in past videos of theirs from the Cretin and others that all say, yes, deltas are going to be built on the production line, and these will be essentially what you get. They'll test and validate them. They'll fine-tune a little, but they're still coming down the production line. You'll be getting these things when you buy them. That's not the case. Just take a look at what that first Bink is doing when it gets to Carlsbad. It's going to sit there just like you see it, and they're going to put the wiring harness in it. And they'll see if a few other little things that are internal to the cabin will fit. And that's it. That's not past being a prototype. It is an early stage prototype. When you really factor in what you're getting and what they're doing with it, it is an early stage prototype. All they have done is got nearly all of the body. And when I say nearly all of it, there's still not all of it there. There's still the frame and the roll cage and the belly pan all missing. So they don't even have the body. But they'll tell you they've got the whole body there, and they'll say that it's a PI, a production intent. It is not. It's an early prototype. And they have a long, long way to go with no money to do it with, no plant equipment to do it with, no supplies to do it with. They are up the proverbial creek without a paddle.
Question number 4. How big is the market? According to Fortune Business Insights, in 2020, the U.S. EV market size was estimated at over $24 billion and is projected to reach a whopping $137 billion by 2028. That's a compound annual growth rate of over 25%. And Kelley Blue Book reports that EVs captured a record 7.6% share of the total U.S. vehicle market in 2023, up from 5.9% in 2022. APTERA sees their potential market as 600,000 vehicles per year, broken down amongst these groups. There are the folks who are looking for 2-passenger vehicles. U.S. Department of Transportation data shows there are only 1 or 2 people occupying a car in the average daily commute, and many in the large baby boomer market simply don't need large family vehicles. APTERA believes it will also attract folks who enjoy riding motorcycles and 3-wheelers. The company believes environmental advocates and energy-saving advocates will be drawn to their vehicle, as well as commuters who put a high value on efficiency.
All I can say is beware of lies, damn lies, and statistics. And in this case, the statistics are just indefensible. You cannot say that they're going to have a large enough customer base to be an ongoing concern. Just things like retirees only need 2 seats. That's not true. I've just recently bought a new car. I'm a retiree. Our children have left home about a decade ago, and I couldn't buy another two-seater simply because my wife said, no, I need to drive the grandkids around now and then. It's that simple. One little instance like that, and the whole statistic goes out the window. Retirees buy five-seaters because they want to drive the grandkids around. Commuters take a five-seater to work because after work they want to drive the family around. Or on weekends, they want it for the weekend. So the market is not as big as they make out it to be. All it takes is a bit of deep thought, a little further research to realise that they can just manipulate a potential market as long as they're superficial about their research. If a person has a perfect fit for a vehicle for 350 days of the year, but then see that another 15 days of that year there will be added needs, they will buy the vehicle that will supply those added needs for 15 or 20 days of the year. That's just the way humans work.
Keep in mind that APTERA already has more than 47,000 vehicle reservations, representing over $1.7 billion in potential revenues. And while they will have the capacity at first to build 20,000 vehicles per year, their finance people tell them they only need to sell 6,000 units per year to be financially stable.
Their finance people tell them they need 6,000 units per year. That's the big problem. It's their financial people that tell them. You need to get external confirmation of this. Otherwise, you could be trapped by lies. It's too risky. As for the 47,000, if they had charged what would be a reasonable $5,000 to $10,000 as a pre-order deposit, they wouldn't have 2,000 pre-orders by now in 4 years. The reason why they've got 47,000 is because most of them have paid $70. And $70 is, what, half a tank of petrol these days? And so they're quite happy to fork out possibly the price of a meal for two at a steakhouse in the wild hope that this has got some reality to it. But that's all it is. If there were no $70 and $100 pre-order prices, there would not be anywhere near 47,000. And another thing that he has failed to mention is that within probably a year, in the past 4 years, they have reached that 46,000 mark, and they have been pitifully slow in the subsequent 3 years to go much higher. There is a complete dearth in new pre-orders. They had to have a pretty poor accelerator program, which they touted as a success, but it was a poor accelerator program and it kicked loyal fans in the face, but they had to have that just to stay alive till now. And it's not closed. The poor suckers that are in there are still putting in money to compete against each other. It is, in my book, highly unethical that they did it in the first place. And it's certainly unethical that they can't even close it properly.
Question number 5. Why this? Why now? Consumer interest in EVs will fluctuate, but on the whole, it is rising due to environmental concerns and potential cost savings as gas prices fluctuate.
Increased demand for EVs can't translate to increased demand for this strange and silly trike. It is electronically propelled, but there is so much different about it that it no longer fits into the category of the EVs that are increasing in demand. Once again, lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Federal and state tax credits make EVs more affordable for buyers.
Yes, they do, but there's no hope of there being any federal and state tax credits for this machine as far as it looks. They're still lobbying and getting nowhere as far as I can tell. I would not count this as a reason to invest or to pre-order an APTERA because the chances of getting government incentives are extremely slim.
Not only that, but APTERA is now eligible for certain types of government funding that wasn't available to it during its first iteration back in 2009.
The government funding that they're eligible for is such a pittance compared to the money they need to succeed that it's not going to save them.
Improvements in battery range and charging infrastructure are addressing some of the previous limitations of EVs. APTERA already addresses some of these issues by designing models with ranges from 250 to 1,000 miles of range per charge.
If APTERA was in Australia, It's my personal belief that the CEOs, would be in jail for false advertising. The very fact that they were touting alphas as having solar technology and 250-mile ranges when there was absolutely no solar on apart from dead cells stuck onto the body, and a forklift battery or smaller that wouldn't go 1/10 of the 250-mile minimum that they were advertising. And certainly the 1,000 miles was just the biggest lie over the top that one could do. And yet they did it. In Australia, we have what's called advertising standards laws, and they would have breached those laws and been prosecuted and jailed for what they did there. And they've done much, much more. They can sell the snake oil in America because the laws are what I would call lax, I suppose. If they were in Australia, it would be a different story. These guys don't use technological advancements. They pretend they do. A heat pump is a technological advancement that's at least a decade old or more. And it's a simple technological advancement, and yet they don't use a heat pump. They use an inferior product. The paints on cars are technologically advanced these days. They last far longer than they used to 15 years ago. They have nanotechnology and all sorts of new technologies in paints now that make them very, very robust. So what did APTERA do? They decided they'd just wrap it, and wraps are inferior. Wraps are inferior to paints. That's a fact. And yet they just go, we are technologically advanced, when they're not. They're going backwards. There are more than that in the examples of technological advancements, but I have to be pretty quick.
Their launch edition will have a range of 400 miles per charge, and all the models will get up to 40 miles of range per day from their solar panels.
Gamma was supposed to be the handmade example before they did production line models. It was the last one that they could hand make. That was their plan. The 4 phases of APTERA prototypes were: third one, Gamma, handmade but representative of what you could buy. And then the 4th one, which hasn't occurred yet. Everybody's getting excited about half a body being sent to Carlsbad. But that 4th one, the early production intent versions of those still had to be built on the production line. They have gone backwards. They've not only reneged on production dates 3 years in a row and will renege again, but they have completely lied about their 4th phase in prototypes. This is why I say it's still an early prototype and not the prototypes that it should be. It should be built on the production line, nothing less. And for you gullible fanboys to accept this backward step and this lie upon lie upon lie upon lie, you just prove how gullible you can be.
And all will have a NACS interface, allowing them to plug into Tesla's excellent supercharger network. So that's why I invested in APTERA.
They don't prove anything about plugging into the network. And my concern is that these prototypes will light up like Roman candles too often when they're plugged into a fast charge network, be it Tesla's or any other. I would not be saying things are good and will happen when really you have no idea what's going to happen. These things could be death traps at charging stations. And I don't have to say that they are. I just need to point out that nobody knows whether they are or not. And that's bad enough. If nobody really knows, if the evidence is not there, then it's not worth the risk. And this is a video about risk. They have had ample opportunity in 4 years to provide evidence that mitigates risk, and they have done almost nothing to do that. There have been times when I've seen that they have made efforts to provide evidence and it just looks faked. And I refer especially to driving up that hill where they showed about 400 metres or yards of going up a hill slowly in the early cool hours of the morning. And they said that they drove it from the bottom to the top 6 times over, I think. But in any case, many, many miles up and down. and yet all we saw was 400 metres. And it came from behind a hill where I think they had just pulled it off the back of a truck and done the drive. There was no evidence that they had fixed the overheating problem in that, but the gullible fanboys swallowed it just like it was the smoothest snake oil you could ingest. It's time you gullible fanboys need to actually look deeper into what you're getting. If you're going to invest, you need to look at the pros and the cons. I'm suggesting a few cons. I'm personally suggesting that there are lots and lots of cons. In fact, I've made over 100 videos that detail many of those cons. It's interesting to note that I've been called all sorts of things personally. The naysayer, the glass half full person, the person who would have said the car will never replace the horse. I've been called everything under the sun, but none of it matters. What matters is nobody, not even Steve Fambro and Chris Anthony or Jason Hill or Munro, none of these people have been able to say, this is me and this is where you're wrong. None of them in all the comments. That has to speak volumes for something wrong with APTERA. That I can make 100 videos, I can be an naysayer, I can be their biggest troll, and I can put these things up and not have any of them turn around and say, this is me, I have expertise, and this is exactly why you're wrong. It has never happened. It's never happened. I don't recall anything of worth from any of them. It's time to wake up and smell the roses. It really is. When I first saw a video about APTERA, I had made this decision that there's possibly a double scam going on here. That the first one was a scam that was so well orchestrated it got away with it scot-free. It will only ever be a theory because it's too late to investigate thoroughly enough. But that was my theory. And my theory after the first viewing was that they are orchestrating a double scam. Even I tip my hat because there's a lot of genius involved in it. But the genius is in the scamming side and not in the building side of the APTERA. And I think everything's unravelling now. I think they're at a stage where they really are in their death throes. I've stuck to my guns. I said at the first place, my guess, I don't like guessing, but I did at this stage, my guess was that they were about 60% scam and 40% genuine. And as events proceeded over the years, my guesses just went higher and higher. 70%, 80%, 90%. And I think the last time I mentioned it, I would have said something like 95 to 98% certain. The delivery of the Bink at this stage has really made me 99% certain now. I believe if they don't fold, they will slowly make these PIs, and the authorities that test them will discover that they are not fit for purpose, and the authorities will shut them down. They will make demands on the CEOs that things need to change so much for this silly trike to be fit for purpose that the CEOs will throw up their hands and go, no, we're out. They're not going to fix it. If they try, I predict another 5 years, and still the product at the end will barely be fit for purpose. It will scrape through after many demands to make things work, to make things safe and all other aspects. After many, many demands, they may scrape through with something. There's my 1%. 99% sure, though, personally, that it's a double scam and they're just milking the last gullible fanboys they can get and we'll be out of here. They'll disappear. I only hope the authorities really do chase them down and look deeply into their finances. Really deeply. They need to find out from similar people to Jan, their short-term finance officer, how people get away with scams. Because I had a feeling that when they employed her, it was to teach them But they need to be on top of it. They need to get right into this because there have been tens of millions of dollars invested in them by gullible people, and they need some sort of protection.
If you want to invest, I list a couple of ways in the notes below. There's an option that allows you to invest as little as $210 at republic.com, or for a minimum investment of $1,000, you can invest at the APTERA website. Please keep in mind that investing in a startup is risky.
Investing $210 is robbing children's piggy banks. This is as low as they're going. At this day and age, that's just piggy bank money, and they've provided the opportunity to do that.
If you aren't prepared for the possibility of losing your investment, please don't invest. If you just want to reserve a vehicle, I have a link below for that as well, which will save you $30.
And there's his skin in the game. There's his reason to create this video. He wants a $1,000 discount, thinking that it's going to come out, and he's buying one. Everyone that puts in $70 with his link, he gets $1,000 off per person. And that's what he's hoping for. He's got Buckley's chance. He's a fool for thinking he can do it.
I hope you liked this episode. Please share this video with anyone who you think might enjoy it, and feel free to leave your comments and questions below.
The thing about this episode is that dozens and dozens and dozens of others have done it. It's nothing new. It's same horse, different jockey when it comes to watching a video. So many dozens of them over the 4 years. No, you can count them in the hundreds. They've all got their skin in the game. They all want that $1,000 discount from the $70 that people put in if they can get another gullible fanboy. Been done too often, been done too many times.
Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me for future episodes of Chasing Aptera.
Well, that's it. Thank you for watching me if you've managed to get this far. Well, that's all from me. Bye for now. Stay safe.